Hello and welcome to this is our third call of the Love Collective, and thank you for being here live, and hello those of you who are watching on the recording. So December the 4th, I was just looking at the date, December the 4th. And today's topic, this month's theme and topic is building a life that we love. So we looked in October at self-love, self-care, and we looked at building a healthy relationship. And part of that was thinking about boundaries with ourselves and with others. And this section is all about building a life that we love. And that is obviously for me and for many of you, I think, interlinked with a healthy relationship, finding one and staying in one, maintaining one. And I just want to share briefly why this was important for me to build a healthy life in order to find a healthy relationship. So I believe that when we are burnt out, worn out, depleted, exhausted, and unfulfilled in our careers, it's very difficult to find the space to find a healthy relationship, and B, to to accept one in. And it's not just about our careers, it's about our entire lives. But there was a time in my life in my 30s where I was very, working very hard as a journalist, dating in that pool. So I thought I needed to date in the pool of journalists because it's all I saw. I was like so busy and blinkered. I was like, oh, I only see journalists or people like them. So I dated a lot of adrenaline junkie journalist type people. There was no time or space in my life to think about what I wanted to do work-wise if it wasn't that, or to think about what I wanted in a relationship. It was full on, all consuming, until I burnt out. So then I was burnt out, worn out, and confused about what to do next. And it's not that we have to totally transform everything and be in our dream careers and producing wonderful creative work. And, we don't have to be in that place in order to find a healthy relationship. But I believe that somehow we need to be honoring our truth, honoring who we are, honoring our dreams a little bit, so that we're not looking for someone to pluck us out of our unhappy lives and bring us some happiness. We're not looking for someone to fix us. We're not looking for someone to change us. We're looking, or to change how we feel about our lives. We have a reasonable life, or we are taking steps towards creating one. And then another person comes along as an addition, as a complement, and we complement each other. So it's the difference from, going from a place of empty, trying to find someone to fill that, to going from a place of reasonably full, reasonably fulfilled, and then bringing someone in. And, I know many of you reasonably well, those live as well as those watching on recording. And I know many of you have dreams, creative dreams, professional dreams. You have a purpose. You have a desire perhaps to be doing things a little bit differently, to have more time and space for yourself, or to accomplish something that you've always longed for and dreamed of. And I believe that is often important to finding a healthy relationship and to maintaining one. And for me, everything changed when I started writing creatively. So I had been writing professionally as a journalist for 15, 16 years. And then I burnt out. And then I started writing creatively on my blog. And that's kind of where I found myself. I reconnected. I was like, wow, this is fun and freeing and feels great and flows and doesn't feel like hard work. And that for me, I think, was the start of me finding myself, and therefore knowing who I was, knowing who I what my values were, and knowing who I wanted to be with. So, it was 2 months after launching my blog From 40 with Love, when I was turning 40, that I first met my husband and thought about him. And then, it took a while for us to get together, but I had just launched my blog and I was very excited. I was very excited. I thought, this is going to be a book. This is who I am. I love writing. I was all fired up. And so that's, I think it's important, because we're enjoying our lives. We've got a passion, we've got a purpose, and it shows in our face, it shows in our eyes, it shows in our energy, compared to how I was, which is exhausted, depleted, burnt out, worn out. So I'd just like you to think if that story resonates with you at all. And I'd like you to pop in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute and speak, knowing that you'll be recorded. What comes to your mind immediately in terms of an area that feels unfulfilled, professionally, creatively? What springs to mind? Any dream? Is there a dream? Is there a life dream that you would like to accomplish? There might be many, but perhaps share one or two that comes to mind. If you have them, and if you don't, it's fine not to know, because if we're busy, often we don't have space to even consider what could come next. And if you're watching on the recording, think about, what is it that your heart longs for in your life, besides perhaps being in a relationship, having a partner? Often I think when we see someone else doing something that we really want to do, that's a good way of knowing that we have an ambition or an aspiration. Whenever I see anyone publishing a novel and it being made into a movie, I'm like, that's who I want to be. So we've got living with my partner and a job that enables me to make more of a difference. Okay, so that would be fulfilling, to be making a difference to people's lives. And I know in this particular case that you're moving towards that, taking steps. So photography course. I miss the creative power I felt then. We are all creative beings, and I never thought of myself as a creative being, even though I was writing loads of stories for, as a journalist for years. I didn't think I was creative. So photography is very creative and fulfilling. I'd like to be an artist, and writing has been tugging at my heart for about the last 5 years. So when I read that expression, tugging at my heart, I picture the little girl. I picture the inner child. When a child tries to get the attention of a parent and maybe tugs at their sleeves, like the dog was just doing to me then, like, I want your attention. I think that's our inner voice. I think that's the child within. And she's tugging. She wants to be noticed and seen and heard. And I think whatever we can do, whatever tiny step we can do to notice her and to see her and to hear her, that brings her pleasure. It helps her to feel noticed. and it helps her to feel more safe, and it helps her to believe that there's an adult in charge who's taking care of her. She doesn't feel neglected. Doing more of what I love but don't do. We all do that. Charity shop, clothes shopping, being more creative in clothes, jewelry, hanging out with friends, dancing. And deep dream is caring for a young person in my own home. My sort of parenting. Yeah. And these are all really fulfilling. I think they fulfill parts of us that are waiting. They are waiting to feel fulfilled. Staying off dating apps while working on a major milestone. Declutter and sell a house and move to London. Yeah, so that sounds important in terms of creating a space where you want to bring people and entertain people. So I'd just like you to think also and elaborate a little bit on what I've said. Well, the first question is, do you think this matters for your romantic relationship status? That's kind of a yes or no. How important is it for you to be taking steps on fulfilling these heartfelt dreams? How important is that, do you think, for you having a healthy relationship? Do you think it matters? What does your instinct say on that? And why does it matter? Why do you think it matters? So does it matter? Could I have stayed as a worn out, exhausted, all consumed by journalism? Could I have stayed in that role and found healthy love? Do you think it matters that you're fulfilling some of the desires of your heart in little ways or taking steps towards them? And how does it matter? Why does it matter? Okay, so it matters a lot because otherwise I'll be bringing frustration and negativity into the relationship. Yeah, when I do the things I love, it brings out the best in me. Yeah, and that can be creatively, professionally, when I'm in the outdoors, cycling or swimming in the sea and all those things, that they bring out the best in me. I'm truly alive. My eyes are shining, my cheeks are glowing. It would make a relationship richer because you're in a more positive, fulfilled state rather than looking to the partner to meet all our needs. Exactly. So somebody raised their hand. Would you like to speak, just knowing that the recording is on?
Yeah, to answer your question why it matters, you've already said it matters because when you're trying to meet somebody, you'll give off a more positive energy. You said you'll show it in your eyes and your face and your energy. So that helps with actually connecting and meeting with people. Plus, if you do meet somebody, you'll be generally a happier person if you're living a happier, more fulfilled life. So that will contribute to the relationship. And finally, probably most significantly, this connects with your other sessions. If you don't try to find your own fulfillment within yourself, the opposite of that is, as you said at the beginning, you're looking to somebody else to try and complete your life. First of all, nobody's going to be able to do that. And secondly, if you're not a happy person, and say, for example, you're rushing into meeting the next person, perhaps you're on a rebound. If you are rushing or you're unhappy, then you're likely to make wrong choices. You're likely to be choosing the person who on the surface might satisfy some of your immediate needs, but they're not satisfying the deep long-term needs. That's what I think the answer to your question is.
Thank you. Very well put. Yeah. And yeah. And I think as you know, I always love to to go as deep as possible. And I think from the psychological perspective, what's so important to hold in mind is if we're not meeting our own needs, as was just said, we will be looking to other people to meet them for us. And obviously in relationships, people do meet each other's needs in a certain way. But if we have a gaping hole, a massive gap, a thirst or a hunger, I remember when I was in my 30s, I was dating a guy who lived in Washington. And I was done with my career in London, and I was kind of done with London. And I thought, I'll move to Washington and I'll move in with him. And I don't know what I'll do, but I'll move in with him and I'll move to Washington. And he said no. He said no, I couldn't move in with him, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, although it felt like terrible rejection. But I was looking to him to meet all my needs. I was totally lost and confused in London, didn't know what was happening next, didn't want to be in my job. And I thought, I'll put all my eggs in his basket and he can sort it out for me. And fortunately, he had the good sense to say no, he wasn't prepared to do that. So I had to sort it out for myself. So just think about, those unmet needs. If we are looking to others to meet them, as we've spoken about in the previous sessions, that gets us into a vulnerable situation, a dangerous situation.
Can I say something else?
Yeah.
One of the things that just popped into my head, I thought, when I'm not in a relationship, one of the unmet needs is sort of just intimacy with somebody. In fact, I was speaking to an ex-boyfriend a week or so ago, and he admitted that he misses just being touched by somebody. He even admitted that. And so I just a second later, 2 seconds ago, I thought, well, that can't be met while you're in your non-dating world. But actually, I am trying to meet that need as well, because the only thing I can think of doing is going for a regular massage. So at least it's attempting to meet that need. I don't know if you've got any comments about that, but that's actually quite more seriously, both with regard to sort of deep sort of sexual intimacy, or even just having a hug from somebody that that is missing if you're not dating, and that is a very good example of, for me personally, if I look back to 2 years ago, I paid a lot of money for a dating site and went on quite a few different dates with people, and I think I was trying to rush things because of that. So again, that's an example of making the wrong decision, because to an extent that need can't be met while you're on your own, but you have to perhaps try and do other things. So I don't know what you say about that.
Well, I often, I think it's a good point. So touch is an unmet need. And I think I've mentioned, I do mention it a lot, and I think it's in my book. A healthy way to meet that need for touch is regular massage. And we can also, one of my friends who's a health coach, he's always suggesting that I spend time in the morning with a pot of beautiful moisturizer, and I spend time massaging my feet and my hands and my arms and my legs. Do I do it? No, I don't do it. But it's a lovely suggestion in terms of touch and connection with our skin and our body. So, we do need to find healthy ways to meet that need as well. And also hugs, healthy hugs, and so forth. So thank you for that. I'm just going to see what's in the chat. Boundaries. If I know what's important to me, I know more how to handle priorities and differences and my bottom line. And if I don't know my own needs and wants and dreams, I focus on my partner's dreams. Exactly. We focus. Yeah. So one of our coping mechanisms, I might say, or habits or patterns, sometimes for some of us, is to focus on the other person. And I've done this myself. I remember, like with my husband, I've often sort of suggested, oh, why don't you get a different job? Or why don't you do this? Or why don't you start your own business? and while I'm looking at him, I'm not looking at myself. And we can often try and get our needs met by fixing or changing other people. So yeah, we want to keep the focus on ourselves. Whenever we're spending our energy trying to change somebody else, try and bring it back to yourself. How can I move my own life forwards? And I'm just see what's here. A cliche that people often find a partner when they don't need it. There's an elephant, but I think there's an element of truth to that. Yeah. So a relationship is a bonus, and it comes to us when we're meeting our own needs and on the path to being fulfilled. Absolutely. And we don't have to be perfect, and we don't have to be there yet. But if you can just have a think about whether you are spending any time in your week or taking any tiny steps in your life towards those dreams or towards those long forgotten things like dancing or photography. And is there a way you can, and sometimes we're frightened to get started again, especially with these long forgotten things, but is there a way you can spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, research, doing a little bit of that, little bit of something? I'll come back to this at the end in terms of thinking about your next steps. In terms of, I just want you to think about for a moment about your values. So hopefully you can sort of connect with the word values. So if you were to write your top 3 values, do you know what they would be? And this is in life. And this relates to our careers or how we live our lives. So freedom is, I see now how that is absolutely my top value. And these values often come out of our childhoods. So I didn't feel particularly free in my childhood. I felt trapped. I felt responsible for the grown-ups. So and my mum had it too, a really strong urge for freedom. So freedom is one of my top values. And for a while, I lived that by traveling all over the world and living quite a, crazy, unhealthy life in a way. But where it shows up now is freedom. I want freedom in the way I work. I want to be able to plan my own schedule. I'd like financial freedom. So what are your values? Another value of mine is authenticity. So being real. Do you know your values? And if you'd like to share them, you're welcome to pop them in the chat or unmute and say them. I think about connection, community, variety, independence. Because these values are often signposts. And if you're not sure how to answer it, just feel free to say I'm not sure how to answer it. And if you can nail it down to your top number 1 value, I think mine would be freedom. And if you can't think right now, just take this question away with you. I'll just have a look. Freedom and authenticity, the same as mine. Equality, loyalty, honesty. Adventure, equality, making a difference. So what I'm looking for in a relationship is what I offer and value most and offer myself: good companionship, supportive and caring, and honesty. So when you're thinking about those of you who are considering a career change or feel like you need a change, like hold those values close, put them up on your wall. So if my two core values are freedom and authenticity, I want to build a career that gives me freedom of choice of how I spend my time and that allows me to be my authentic self, to be real, to be true. And in some ways, you know, that's what I try to do. So think about, that's where you want to go. You want to follow those values. Adventure is another actually value of mine. Celebrating everyone's unique voice in the world, including my own. Equality and inclusion and kindness and being helpful to people. Having my own space physically and mentally. Honesty, being in nature. So spaciousness, I like that. I like that sense of, that's one of, there's a bit of an overlap between values and needs. I was thinking this today because I was out and I was looking at the sky and, you know, big horizon. So I have a need for spaciousness. So there's an overlap between values and needs. So I have a need for freedom and it's one of my values. I have a need for authenticity and it's one of my values. So if the word value doesn't prompt anything, think about needs because they often overlap. So these are your needs in your life. So it sounds like many of you have a need, desire, value to be of service. So that would be the value, service. The need is to be of service to people, to make a difference to people. Courage. So for me, these are sort of signposts. If I'm trying to think about, you know, wherever you're at in your life or career, have your values and your needs as signposts. And then I know one of you's got a job interview tomorrow. When you're in that interview or you're looking at the job spec, hold it up against your values and your needs. Does this meet my need to make a difference? Does it meet mine? It might not meet all the needs. It might not meet the value of adventure or whatever, but see if it chimes with what you really want. Yeah. So these are, for me, these are signposts or building blocks on the way to building a life that we love. So we've discussed, we've decided that it does matter that we are living a life that we're reasonably fulfilled in and that we're reasonably content with. So it does matter. It matters to our relationships. And we have looked at why it matters. It matters because otherwise we'd be looking at others to fix us, or we would be looking for someone to fix because that gives us, it helps us to feel wanted and important. So if we can fix other people or sort other people out, it gives us a sense of self-esteem. And we really want to get the self-esteem from the inside. And then we looked at your values and your needs. So I have another being connected with people and having real relationships. So connection, authenticity. These are your important signposts. And the big question is, what stops us from living, from what stops us from building a life that we love, what stops us from pursuing our dreams and our goals, what blocks us. And I'd like you to think about 2 blocks. I'd like you to think about the things I describe as external blocks. So the classic one would be money. I want to do this, but I can't afford to. That would be a classic external block. Time would be a classic external block. I'd like to do more painting, but I don't have time. So they're more the external blocks. Or maybe I don't have a clear direction. I don't really know which way to go. So they're the external blocks. So think about those. What blocks you from building the life that you love or from doing the things that you really want to do? And then the other question is the inner blocks. So this is more difficult. I'm going to actually come on to that. Just give you a moment to think about the outer blocks, which I'm sure many of you would agree on. So share those if you'd like to. If I think I'd like to finish my novel, and if I think I'd like to finish my novel, what are my external blocks? Classic, time and money. So I need to work on my business in order to earn money. And once I have money, that will buy me time to work on my novel. So time and money are pretty classic. It might be the tools, it might be the know-how, it might be might be something practical that you need to make these things happen. So if you want to share any external blocks. Okay, so there's a comment here. I'm just going to focus on the external ones to begin with, and then I'll come back to the internal ones. So the external ones shared here are possibly the knowledge from a practical point of view about what jobs are available, what organizations could I work for, and that would pay enough. There's an external block here in terms of the demands of aging parents and the drain that is on energy and time. So that's an external block. Energy. So chronic health condition that limits energy. Yeah. Yeah, so we have limited energy. We have to tick off the boxes and do these things around the house, family commitments. So that leaves limited energy. And I guess my question there is, comes to the inner blocks, but my question there is there a way to shave a little bit of time and energy off the family commitments? Is there a way to get a bit more help? It's always about like, how do I claw back a little bit of energy and time for my dreams? So time, I always feel tired, and finances. So yeah, finances, I'd like to work part-time. So the external blocks are generally around time and money and energy. But the internal blocks, I'd like you to think about the internal blocks, because this is the most important. And I think I know the practical blocks do exist. The external blocks do exist. They're not nonsense. They're not rubbish. They are true. But often they are disguises, or what's the word I'm looking for? Excuses, said in the nicest possible way. They are reasons that we use because we have internal blocks. So just think about that. So there's somebody shared earlier about self-belief and confidence, biggest block, courage, overcoming fear. So what are your internal blocks? Think about fear of failure. Think about fear of success. Think about fear of criticism, judgment. Think about humiliation, fear of humiliation, fear of making a mistake, fear of what others would say or think. I have a client, and this is quite true for me as well, you know, as a writer, I suppose as someone who from a very young age as a child wanted to be a writer, became a journalist, which was my way to write without having to creatively write. So without having to face my fear of writing creatively. So if my identity is I'm a writer, or if you actually believe that you are a painter, then we have a huge fear of failure, of finding out that actually this dream that I've held all my life isn't actually true. So my identity isn't actually a writer. So we have a huge fear of failure. Lack of confidence and belief in self, self-criticism. I then feel overwhelmed by these two things and then feel stuck and frozen. Yeah, being scared to put myself out there in case someone says you're not up to it. So imposter syndrome, fear of criticism, fear of attack. Now, the deeper part of this question, which we won't be able to, we'll be able to discuss, but we won't be able to resolve in this short time. But, you know, where did those fears come from? So I know from my childhood, I have a fear of being seen. I have a fear of being in the limelight. I have a fear of being criticized and judged and humiliated and told I'm not good. So can you identify the roots of some of your fears? They'll probably be back in your early life. And when I say the roots of your fears, you know, a person might spring to mind, might be your parent, might be your sibling. You might be afraid to step into who you really are for fear of being criticized or judged, fear of others' anger. That's definitely, you know, my case. Yeah, there's a real fear of stepping into my true potential. Because if I put my head above the parapet, somebody's going to throw a brick at it and that's going to hurt. But actually beneath that, just to think about trauma, as I've said before, when we are small children, our very survival depends on those around us loving us and taking care of us. So we feel like we need to keep them on side in order to survive. So if an older sibling or a parent is angry with us, deep inside, we might feel like we might not survive because we need these people on side because they are providing us with our food, water, shelter, emotional needs to a degree. So that's why sometimes, and it was mentioned here, stuck, frozen. For many of us, that's a trauma response, freeze. For many of us, we have these traumatic early life experiences that it feels like life and death to overcome. Am I making sense? To overcome them. So think about the trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn, fawn is the people pleasing. We often end up in jobs or careers. We often are in situations where we're meeting other people's needs and neglecting our own. That's a trauma response. Feeling paralyzed, stuck, frozen, that's a trauma response. And that tells us that the fear of being true to ourselves or speaking our truth or owning our power or stepping into our true selves was really frightening and felt kind of life-threatening. So just to recap, we are understanding the deep roots of the fears. We're looking back to see, oh, that's where that fear took hold. That's where that fear took root. That fear is related to brother, mother, father, my safety, my survival. So someone mentions, there's a fear of going against the norm. So what did it mean as a child? What did it mean to go against the norm? What were the consequences? How did that feel? Did that feel isolating? Did that feel dangerous? Did that feel unacceptable? Yeah. So I think I must have been shamed and made to feel embarrassed by having needs and hopes and dreams. So maybe I gave up. And now it's so flipping hard to undo that and to do something different. Yeah. So what I hear in that is a classic response to childhood challenges, which is a sense of helplessness. There's just no point. There is just no point. I'm going to give up. So just to hold that in mind, because I'm going to move on to the next bit. But all these things we're talking about: a sense of helplessness, the freeze, the fawn, the flight. I'm a classic flight, always busy. Let's stay busy. Let's run around the world, or let's do a busy job and avoid doing what I really want to do. That's the flight. So helplessness is a real childhood. Well, it's a real child place. Because we are helpless as children. We rely on these people to look after us. So I think if you feel helpless today, think of it as a flashback. Think of it as an emotional flashback to a moment in your childhood when you were helpless, because there was very little you could do to change the situation. And I think when we think of it as an emotional flashback, it disempowers it somehow, because okay, I'm in an emotional flashback. This isn't today. This is my childhood. I'm not a child anymore. What can I do to take responsibility today for my needs and wants and hopes and dreams? So that brings me on to this next bit, which is, this is kind of a whistle stop tour of the process. What do you think you can do to address those fears that we've talked about and to help yourself to overcome them? What do you think you can do to break the paralysis, to break the freeze? What do you think you can do to break out of the helplessness? So if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. I can give you some ideas as well. So I was just talking about, okay, I'll just read this. Yeah, exactly. So someone says, sharing with someone about my dreams, using the Telegram group, which you're in and have access to, writing it out loud. So voicing, I think voicing our dreams is a really important first step, because especially if you've been embarrassed or shamed for having hopes and wants and dreams, actually voicing them is really important. And so voicing them to others. Yeah, when I say, hi, I'm Catherine and I'm a writer, like, I feel really embarrassed, even though I've actually published one book and I'm writing others. It's like I still don't feel like I can call myself that. But the more I say it, the more fluent it becomes, and the more I challenge the inner fear. So I'll just see, there's a question there. I was struggling with paralysis this weekend when trying to write something. Is that writing creatively? Yeah, and was wondering if I would be any better once having therapy. Well, I would say that therapy helps with therapy will help. It will also, yeah, therapy will help because it will help you to process the wounds, but you can also do a lot of this yourself. So what was struggling with paralysis? So paralysis is a freeze, it's a trauma response. So what were the voices in your head telling you when you were trying to write? And whose were those voices? Were they saying it's not safe, stay small, don't use your gifts? Were they saying you're no good? Were they saying get back in your box? Were they saying don't be seen, it's not safe to be seen? So what were they saying? Whose voices were they? Can you identify if they belonged to someone from your past? So therapy will help, but you can also help yourself. So for example, in that moment, could you reach out? Did you reach out? You know, this is why we need supportive communities. You know, could you next time just pop a message in the group, even if nobody replies in the moment, but just say, help, I really need to write. I really want to write something. I'm totally paralyzed. I feel the fear. Or a phone call to a friend, even if they don't answer, like someone who really gets you and understands you. Yeah. I mean, therapy will help to understand, the roots and unpick the roots and dismantle and process and so forth. So, yes, but we don't have to wait. And even in therapy, I'm in therapy and I have lots of other supportive resources around me. I have people I can ring. I have groups I can post in. I can say I'm struggling. So yeah, I would say don't rely on the therapist either. Build the networks, use the tools, use the groups and networks that are already out there. So what else will help you? Gratitude and a positive log of things I have achieved and done well, collecting compliments and wins. Great. So often we struggle to celebrate ourselves and we're just on to the next thing. I'm very guilty of this. So we have an achievement and then we move on to the next achievement because nothing is ever good enough. And that's the classic kind of hole in the soul, constantly seeking more. So if we can pause and give to ourselves what wasn't given to us in many cases. So, if we can pause and give to ourselves affirmation, validation, congratulation, gifts, compliments, holding a compliment in our heart. So that's great. So just going back to the what was shared about the freezing when writing, experienced a physical zoning out, like my brain got fogged and my eyes went clouded. So that sounds to me like a trauma response. Brain reduces to the size of a pea or gets all foggy. So that sounds like a physical manifestation of a psychological problem. And I think if you can keep going to the fear, if you can keep drilling down to the fear, what lies underneath. And the other way is to try and bring lots of play into it. So if you're writing or painting or drawing or being creative in another way, even if you're looking for a job or whatever it is you're doing, try and be more playful about it. I think when we get really rigid about it's got to be the perfect job or it's got to be the perfect bit of writing, then we put ourselves in a straitjacket and then we will freeze. So the other thing that is important, which I kind of alluded to earlier, and you all know, is being a good parent to yourselves. So reparenting yourselves. So the part of you that gets stuck in the trauma responses, the freeze or the fawn, is the frightened, wounded child. And if the frightened, wounded child doesn't sense the presence of a compassionate, caring, supportive adult, i.e., you, then she's going to stay frightened and wounded. And she's not going to want to take a risk, change her career, apply for a different job, do some painting, do some drawing, because she doesn't feel safe. The frightened, wounded child still thinks that her needs and wants don't matter, that she will be ashamed if she has needs and wants, that she must stay silent and be good. I wrote in very big letters the other day, I am not a good girl. I am not a good girl because of something that's happening in my life. And I just need to stand up and not be a good girl. I need to confront and speak up. But I won't be able to do that if the child is in the driver's seat. I will be terrified. So reparenting, self-soothing, speaking to yourself. For me, this is the answer. It's absolutely critical. I know it's not easy to do. I know it takes time. I know it feels a bit foreign. But if you can just manage like 5 minutes each day of trying to locate your inner child or your inner teenager or your inner young adult and find out what's going on for her. How are you feeling? Okay, you're feeling frightened about money. You're feeling scared about being seen. Okay, I hear you. I see you. You're not on your own. I know it was frightening when you were little, but I am here now. I am your parent. I'll create a safe space for you. And let's just play. Let's play. Let's play at it. Let's just have a go. Let's have fun with it. Okay, so someone says listening to music or having something else going on like TV can help shift from physical stuckness. Yeah. I only need to do the thing I'm struggling with for 5 minutes. And then by feeling physically soothed, I can do more. Yeah. So that might be worth trying. Perhaps if you need to do something creative and you feel stuck, it might be worth putting some music on. It might be worth sitting on the floor and doing it. Just changing your environment, shaking things up a bit. So let's just check the time. I'm going to just recap and then ask us a question to wrap up, and then I'll switch the recording off and we can see if there are any other questions. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. Yeah, someone says about positive role models and mentors who've achieved our dreams can help shift energy and give us a focus. Yeah. So keep your eyes out for people who are doing what you want to do. And you can always reach out to them. How did they do it? What steps did they take? So we've established that building a life that we love matters. It matters in terms of personal fulfillment. It also matters in terms of enabling us to have a healthy relationship, because otherwise we're looking for someone to fill the hole, fix what's wrong, distract us, take us away from this life that we're not happy with. And then we're putting that onus on someone else. So it matters, and we know why it matters. And we've talked about our values, which are often overlapping with our needs. So think about your needs. When you're thinking about the life that you want to build, think about your needs. Think about your blocks, external, often very practical things. There are things that we can change. So when we talked about time is often an external block. Energy is an external block. But as we said, perhaps we need to keep a closer track on our time. How much time in a day do I spend on Instagram? Is that helpful? Could I spend 10 minutes of that time doing something else? How much time in my day do I give to other people to sort them out, to make sure they're okay? Could I reduce that a little bit and give to myself? How much time do I over deliver in my work? How often do I stay till 6 when I'm only supposed to stay till 5:30? Could I claw that back, regain my energy, channel it into something that I really want to do? When I wake up in the morning, do I switch my phone on and look at Facebook? Could I get those 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, and do something productive? I heard the other day, create before you consume. Create before you consume. So if you tend to consume on social media as one of the first things you do in the morning, can you create first? That can be as simple as creating a nice home. So it could be like 10 minutes of tidying. It could be 10 minutes of writing. So create before you consume. Consuming is one of those, and I do it all the time. It's one of those numbing, deadening I mean, sometimes it's good to consume stuff because it's helpful and insightful, but often it's the distraction, and it numbs us and it deadens us and it disconnects us from who we really are and what we want to do. So think about the external blocks, how you can shave off a little bit of time, bring back a bit more energy. Money, is there anything you can do around money that will bring a little bit back so that you can spend it on something you really want to spend it on? And think about the internal blocks, which we all know: fear, lack of self-belief, lack of confidence. Think about where they came from, what are the roots of those blocks, and then how do we overcome them? So we overcome them with support, not doing it on our own, speaking out loud, breaking the shame, getting some accountability people in our lives, and through parenting ourselves and telling the inner child that we are in charge, that she is safe, that we're just gonna like have a little go at doing a bit of this or a bit of that, and it's only for 10 minutes, and I'm going to take care of you and you are safe. So self-soothing reparenting is absolutely crucial, because many of the things we're talking about are rooted in childhood trauma. The way through that is to reconnect with the child within and soothe her, meet the needs that weren't met. So just while I have a look what's in the chat, the final question is, so we've got this month of December in our group, which is focusing on building the life that you love. Now, obviously, January is always a good time to think about that. But the problem with January starts and like we've got this pressure to complete these resolutions or to change our lives. Imagine if we just start gently by thinking about it now in December. So, we can think about all the other themes too: self-love, self-care, healthy relationships, boundaries. But imagine if you were just to take these next few weeks to take some tiny actions towards your dreams. So I would like you to think, final question, about an action, 2 actions, 3 actions that you want to take that would help you move towards building a life that is more fulfilling, more authentic to you, more fun, more joyful. And that could be, somebody shared, deleted the Facebook and Instagram apps from my phone. I kind of feel like I should do that, but that's kind of part of my business. Okay, have to log in via website. Yeah. So if you can't do that, if like me, you kind of use them for your work all the time, then boundaries around them is really important. We talked about that on the boundaries workshop. Setting loving boundaries for ourselves. That might be something you want to do in the next few weeks. You might want to carve back a bit more time for yourself. As I said here, it's never too late to achieve your dreams. You might want to think about rewarding yourself. Yeah, I'm really terrible at rewarding myself. What's really helpful for that is to have someone to remind you all the time. Have you rewarded yourself? So you could do that for each other in the group. Maybe we can have another thread on rewards. How do we celebrate ourselves? How do we reward ourselves? So have a think, and you can put this in the chat or put it in the Telegram group as it comes. And if you're watching on recording, put it in the Telegram group. What steps are you going to take in the next few weeks to move towards building a life that you love, so that when January comes, you've already got a little bit of momentum, or you know where you're heading? And for everyone, this will be different. It could be something practical. It could be something psychological. It could be doing a bit of reparenting. It could be celebrating. It could be deleting apps. So it's going to be different for everyone. Making time for values, for adventure. Absolutely. Yeah. So making time to tune in to those values and needs. So, you know, if I have a good walk on the beach with those big skies and that sense of freedom, I have spent that hour of my day connecting with freedom, which is one of my core values. Save up some money, make some time to research cameras, and get a basic digital camera to encourage me to head out and get creative with photography. That sounds like a wonderful goal. And just investing that money, you're investing that money in yourself, or you're saving that money, which is important for your dreams. So I'm going to wrap up. I'll stay on for a few more minutes. So I'm going to switch the recording off. If you want to carry on sharing your steps, please do. If you're on the recording, please share any insights. I'll start a separate thread. And yeah, please share any insights, share any steps. Remember that this all overlaps. So someone says about being more authentic, talking to my partner about some changes in our relationship that I want to make in order to be more honest. Yeah. So that's the value of authenticity. So yeah, well done, everyone. Those of you who are here live, thanks for all your shares in the chat or voice shares. Yeah, I'll stop the recording now. And yeah, I'll be sharing in the next, towards the end of December, how we can continue to support each other. If you would like to continue as part of a similar group in the new year. Still need to work a few things out as usual, but I'll let you all know about that. Okay, thank you for watching. I'm going to end the recording, not the meeting. Stop recording.